Okay, we should be live. Let me try to get you live on Instagram, but it's not allowing me. Oh, here we are. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. And tonight's for anyone who freezes or overmanages when conflict shows up. You know, you want to stay calm and clear, but in the moment, your body either shuts down or takes over. Whether you lean anxious, avoidant, or somewhere in between, which is fearful avoidant or disorganized, this is about learning to communicate with care, not control. And if you identify as more independent or avoidant leaning, this will give you language that protects your freedom without isolating yourself. Because communication isn't just about being heard, it's about being cared for, including by yourself. So here we go. This is something new today I'm using, just so you're aware. I'm using Restream and it's not going to have the intro or anything else. And we're just going to get right into it. It is live, but I'm not inviting people over into Restream because I only have access for a certain amount and it's new. So here I'm doing something new to liven it up because today I tried this multiple different ways and it was not exactly fun. And um, so here we go. So, what we're talking about is conflict and how to communicate during conflict. Conflict doesn't start with disagreement, it starts with disconnection. And first, disconnection with ourselves. Sometimes we delay, sometimes we assume, sometimes we take responsibility for things that aren't ours and hand away what actually is ours. And when we don't know where our domain ends and another's begin, requests can turn into requirements. And that's when a need for safety becomes a need for control. This isn't a flaw. It's a signal from our nervous system saying, I don't know how to stay present and safe at the same time. So, we're going to go through the three insecure attachment styles and give you a preview of what might be happening when we're in the mode of control and don't realize it. Or, and this is when we're actually working on addressing our emotions, our body sensations, and our automatic actions, our ingrained beliefs, our story. Like we're already in that place, right? We're doing that work and but still, we don't have the language because even if we're somewhat regulated, we've been trained to communicate in a way that is not really compassionate, not only to ourselves, but also to others. And so I'm going to give a little bit of a rundown of what that could look like when it's a little off and what you could use to bring it back to feeling a little bit more compassionate toward yourself. So you can use this type of language with yourself first, whether it be you're realizing you're pressuring yourself today, which I was, just so you know, and that's why I'm doing this differently today, or you're dealing with somebody, um, you know, a loved one. Okay, so we're going to start with one of the three insecure attachment styles, anxious preoccupied. And let's say they've been doing this work, right? They know what their feelings are. They even think they know what their needs are, and they're approaching somebody and saying, "Are we okay? I haven't heard from you. I need you to be available. I'm upset and need a vent." Or I'm, "Hey, can are you available?" And that is fine. Your need is perfectly fine to want someone to be there for you. Possibly your anxiety might be coming off in that, like, are we okay? Are you okay? I haven't heard from you. And that is understandable. But there might be a place where you're outsourcing regulation through emotionally dumping, not requesting exactly in specificity what you need, understanding that your story that's happening might not actually be happening, relying on others to calm the storm instead of creating inner steadiness. So that sounds like a lot of pressure on us to do a lot of work. But it might help if we have the language to feel regulated as well as actually being regulated. So let's go to dismissive avoidant. Here's a phrase that they might say or think: I need for you not to attend, or I need for you to not contact me so I can feel free to go, take care of myself, be independent. I have to decompress, whatever it is. So the need for freedom is totally makes sense, right? Just like the anxious preoccupied may need connection. Both of these needs are totally reasonable. And there might be something that you're seeing that is common in the way they're communicating though. And so we're going to go over that on the next step. But with dismissive avoidant, they're needing a lot more independence and they're putting their hands kind of and backing up away. While anxious preoccupied are going like this, right? So anxious preoccupied is like codependent and dismissive avoidant is counter-dependent, and they actually attract each other, just like fearful avoidant, anxious side will attract the dismissive avoidant side. So in dismissive avoidant, outsourcing care by asking others to pull away or by them doing the same so they can feel free, reaching into others' freedom to preserve their own. There's a place where there's an in between for both of these styles. So we're going to go to fearful avoidant, where let's say they say, where were you? You seemed quiet earlier. So this is more the anxious side, right? Is something wrong? And there's this place of mistrust, like something happened, they're watching, they're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm noticing there's like a disconnect or inconsistency, and there must be. So they're outsourcing their stability through hypervigilance, scanning for what might go wrong to avoid surprise or rejection. Each strategy makes complete sense. And their nervous system habits, not character flaws, but they hand over their agency and blur relational consent lines. And maybe you can see the parallels on the communication, on what they use and where, and how that can create that blur. No one can make you feel free or secure, but two people can build safety that lets both stay true to themselves. So, control tries to manage others to reduce discomfort. Collaboration manages ourselves while inviting shared clarity. Start with positive reframing. So, this is a way to start off a conversation by remembering how your story around this situation may not be 100% true, whether it be about yourself or the other person or both. So start with positive reframing, remembering that this person has probably done something in the past that disproves the worry that you might be having in the moment. Like they're not available, what's going on, or they're not giving me the space I need and I'm feeling really stressed about that. Acknowledging what works, um, so yeah, acknowledging what had worked as safety, like building that structure. So avoidant systems that sorry, I'm trying to understand what this thing um yeah, so just saying something positive beforehand. So let's start with anxious preoccupied. The control phrase was, you didn't text me back all day. Do you even care? So that's more like a step over to blame, like, how dare you? You did this and why? Instead, a collaborative reframing would be, I really appreciate the times you've checked in before, and it helps me feel connected when you do. When I don't hear from you, I start to feel anxious and disconnected. I'm practicing self-soothing when that happens. And you don't even have to say that out loud. It's like, I'm already doing this. And would it work for us to check in? Would it work for you if we could check in once later in the day today? Or, hey, I'm really needing like a 15-minute, like be really specific on what you need. Sometimes with anxious preoccupied, this is kind of a overarching theme for anxious preoccupied. Sometimes it's not about quantity. It is about probably quality. It's probably more about consistency. And they might just want to know, like, when. Or, "Hey, I'm gonna be back." Or, "Hey, what is actually happening?" So and that might be more important than the actual amount of time or, like, too much time, right? So, for yourself, if you're anxious preoccupied, pay attention to what is it you really are needing. And so when we say need, okay, so it might be like, I want emotional connection. Okay, how does that look? And this is why we say in the care package, number 3 of the Confidence Coming Out course, to actually pay attention to really how to give yourself that emotional connection. What does that look like? It's probably very simple. And when you don't do it in a systematic way, let's say my connection or care for myself is consistently brushing my teeth, or I'm making it really simple. And if I don't do that and I'm like haphazardly doing it, and then I'm like not aware, I'm like, when am I going to do this? And all of a sudden, my teeth are disgusting, right? And then I'm grumpy and I'm wondering why I'm so grumpy. And this goes for whatever other behavior that you see as caring. So I think that anxious preoccupied is really like seeking that connection and wanting to know that it's actually going to be available and that the person is going to be there. However, their work to do is to know how to do it for themselves. Because if you are continuously seeking something and one, you don't know how to do it for yourself, two, you haven't done it for yourself in a long time, and I'm talking about all the things. Because I've heard somebody say that, they were seeking touch and sexual fulfillment. And I'm like, well, you can actually fulfill these things for yourself. I hate to say it, but yes. And yes, it's going to feel, you're going to want all of these things desperately. And that does not come off well. You are going to get somebody who's probably very dismissive avoidant or pushy at first. They might seek you in the beginning. But if you're not taking care of yourself and knowing how to fulfill these needs, then it's going to come off. You're going to be very, why am I feeling such a rift internally and anxious? So hopefully that gives you clarity. To positively frame is going to be really helpful. So I really appreciate the times you checked in. And it really helped me feel connected. I'm noticing when I don't hear from you like I normally was before, and then all of a sudden you drop off and I don't know why, then I start to get anxious. I really need a lot more consistency, and what that looks like is that when you drop off, you are really specific about, hey, I'm noticing I've overextended myself at work. I've overextended myself in general this week, and I'm going to need some time off. And we're going to get into this for the dismissive avoidant, but I'm going to need some time off. And it has nothing to do with you. And I would like to talk to you by blah, blah, blah. Does that sound good? So the anxious preoccupied needs to know for themselves what they absolutely need and where their limits are. And that's number 4 of the confidence coming out, which is next week, starting the 22nd, is the containerize, which talks about our boundaries and our limits. Okay, so we're going to go on to dismissive avoidant. Let's say their controlling statement is, I need you not to attend so I can feel free to go at my leisure. Or I need some time away so that I can decompress. And you'll notice why this sounds fine. All of it sounds fine sometimes, even when it's, like, not shameful or put onto somebody else. Because dismissive avoidant is very independent. So they do say a lot of I statements instead of you statements, and that is positive, and they usually seem very regulated, but a lot of the time, they're also numbing. So you as somebody else who doesn't understand that might think, I'm confused. Everything seems fine, but maybe it isn't. And so the collaborative statement with positive reframing is more like, I really value how you respect my need for autonomy. When I feel overscheduled, I notice I start shutting down. Like, this is about me. Like, I did this to myself. I'm owning what I did. I'm also realizing, and this is another part about like owning your side, even in anxious, preoccupied, owning like, hey, I'm noticing like I'm probably doing that not just because of inconsistency, like, I'm gonna do all these things for myself, but you don't even need to say that. But for anxious, preoccupied, for dismissive avoidant, it is really helpful because who you're speaking to is probably not a dismissive avoidant. Who you're speaking to is somebody who uh, would like to know that you are considering them. And while a dismissive avoidant might actually want the anxious or anybody else to value what they've already done. So the positive reframing is actually for someone more dismissive avoidant than it is for the anxious preoccupied. Now, the um, awareness of how your behavior in the first place may affect others is actually for the anxious preoccupied. And it's funny, right? So the dismissive avoiding say, "Okay, I really value what, your autonomy." And at the same time, I'm realizing I overscheduled and I'm feeling really overwhelmed. It has nothing to do with you. And I understand that me pulling back probably affects you greatly. That's why I'm talking right now. I'm planning some solo time this weekend to reset, but I'm also gonna start paying attention to how much I say yes to things, because what's happening is I'm realizing it's affecting my relationship, not just with you, but with others and myself. And I would like to have more time off and say no more often instead of have it be a big chunk like this. So I'm sorry about that. If I get quiet, just know I'm recharging, but I would like to see you on Sunday evening. And it's a lot of words, right? So dismissive avoidant probably feels very overwhelmed by all those words. But there are pieces to this, right? So I said positive reframing, acknowledging what you did that brought you to want to have so much distance. Like, say the context, right? The context is, I'm noticing that I kind of overdid it this week. And it has nothing to do with you. Okay, so context. Third is saying, I get it that me doing this is not just affecting me, but is also affecting you and us. Like, acknowledging your behavior is so key. Um, and then saying, hey, I acknowledge it so much that I'm realizing that I need to do something about that. So I want you to know that I'm not just going to take a recharge, but I actually have to start thinking about how to do this differently moving forward. Now, the anxious preoccupied can do that too, for sure. They can say, "Hey," but most likely if they're talking to a dismissive avoidant, they probably don't need to do that. They could say, "Hey, do you wanna know that I'm gonna actually blah, blah, blah?" Like, you could ask, right? But it's possible it might be, like, too many words. And then come back to the table. So the dismissive avoidant, it's very important to say, "I'm gonna recharge," and then to actually have a clear, "I'll be back here. This time I want it for me. It's not about you. I actually want to see you." Instead of putting the the need onto somebody else, you know, because just like with anxious preoccupied, their need is about their care, right? And dismissive avoidant is also their need is about their space. Like, so how can we do the opposite of that to acknowledge, like, I actually do need you and want you in my life. And needing is not a bad thing. Needing other people to be reliable is not bad. It's actually trustworthy, but we have to communicate that as well. So, for an avoidant nervous system, this kind of clarity preserves independence and signals reliability, right? Reliability. To be able to rely upon somebody, and also that it's okay to rely upon somebody. There's no mixed messages and no guilt. Now, fearful avoidant is is a mix, but it's really about trust. So let's try fearful avoidant. You seem distant earlier. So let's say they say, you seem distant earlier. What's wrong? So they're putting their worry onto somebody else, right? Are you mad at me? Like, this must be about you, not about me. So you'll notice that the control phrase is usually going like this. Let me give you my issue. Let me go over, put my need and my feelings over to you. Instead, they can say, I really value how honest you've been in the past, really being clear about where you are and what's going on with you, because it helps me trust us and trust you. When you seemed quieter earlier, I noticed like something different happened and I noticed I got uneasy and started assuming. And that's something I'm working on. I just want you to know. That usually comes from my fear of being blindsided, and that's my shit. However, I want you to know that by talking to you right now, I'm trying to work on that. So I was wondering if we could at some point have a check-in, like tomorrow for 15 minutes, just to say what's going on with each other. So I know it's like we're not in any weird place. Does that sound good? And yeah, there's definitely with fearful avoidant, there's this fear of that their curiosity is going to be a problem. Of course, they also have to take care of their stories and their story making and their boundaries. So, number 4, containerize of the confidence coming out course is next week starting the 22nd. And it really dealing with your own needs and fulfilling your needs will give you more clarity on your limits. You'll understand if you find your core needs, which are usually about 3 to 5, they tend, if you're fulfilling them, you'll get some really clarity about what do I actually need and how much, and what does that look like? Um, and that goes across the board for your relationship. So it'll give you more clarity on how to communicate what you need. Like in this type of relationship, like for fearful avoidant, you might say, in this type of relationship, I absolutely need a check-in every week that lasts like 15 minutes each. Or that's just something that if I don't get that, it doesn't seem this relationship doesn't seem valuable to me. And that seems so direct and cut, right? But I feel like I'm also open to communicating how we can meet together. Being able to collaborate and be like, I'm also open to talking about that. And I actually need a partner or friend or whoever that is willing to do that. Okay, so the lesson control changes people to find safety, right? You're trying to change somebody else to find your own safety. Collaboration changes the approach to create safety together. Positive reframing keeps the nervous system open long enough for that to happen. So we're just going to quickly through NVC. I only have 5 minutes because I have to be off by 7:30. But NVC is nonviolent communication framing. So number 1 is observation, and that looks like when this happens and using judgmental words, and I think I've talked about this before. I'm gonna say something that I said before, which is, let's say you say, "When you are loud, just so you know," and this is the hard part about MVC, is that our language is very, judgmental and evaluative, like, it has a lot of valuation, and one of them is loud. Loud is actually, um, like, what is loud to you? Everybody has different capacity on sound. Some people need loud, right? Higher volume. So you could say, when I notice your voice get higher in volume, I feel, and this is number two, I feel really stressed out. And, maybe you can say your story. My story is, and this is not part of NBC, but this is context. Um, like, I feel really stressed out because in my past, when people get the volume goes up, all of a sudden, it means to me that there's a fight and there's a conflict and that you're upset with me. But I realize that's probably not true. Number 3, my need, because I actually value calm, I value clarity too, and, um, like, secure communication and volume can make my anxiety heighten, but also I have a hard time hearing what's happening. So I request that if you really need your volume to be up, well, first, when you're doing that, is it mean something? Does it mean what I think it does? 2, can you tell me, um, if you could, like, maybe calm yourself, walk away when that happens, if you are stressed, and that's why your volume's going up? And then, like, that's a request. Would you be willing to blah, blah, blah? So an example is, when plans change last minute, I feel unsettled. Like, what's going on? Because I value reliability. Would you be open to confirming plans the night before? And that sounds really, like, so basic, right? But you could just do it instead. But it's brief, it's clear, and it's emotionally honest, and perfect for listeners who prefer logic and structure. So we've got 2 minutes. Okay, so I want you to practice how to. So, number 1, pause before speaking. Note when your body is doing, so the bias key. And if you don't know what that is, look into my other videos. Number 2, translate the sensation into a need. So, be like, "Ah, what is it that I'm all that bias and the band key, what is it wanting me to do and why? What am I trying to get out of that?" And 3, name what's yours to handle, to understand, like, what do I need to actually do for myself? And you notice the ownership, like taking actual ownership of your feelings, of the things you have to do, of the part that's actually bringing up that fear in you is probably this work you have to do. Now, number 4, make a simple collaborative request. And number 5 is end with curiosity. Like, just don't assume that that they're gonna say yes. How does that sound to you? Like, can we meet in the middle? Actually do some kind of, can we come together? It doesn't have to be exactly like this, maybe, but is there a way we can find a place that feels good to both of us? Okay, closing. Let's practice voicing one small need and calmly, early, and with ownership. Say what it will do for yourself first, then what support you'd appreciate. So, communication isn't about being heard, it's about being cared for, starting with you. So, tomorrow we're going to talk about the care package series again, and we're going to explore how to listen from fulfilling your own needs to calm your own fear. And I hope to see you then. And it is 7:30. Okay, bye.